Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Forum Daily West. Here are some of the top stories we have lined up for you tonight. Tensions rise in the Middle East as Israel targets Hamas leaders in Qatar while they discuss ceasefire in Gaza. Plus, the Israeli military urges an evacuation of Gaza City and drops leaflets warning Palestinians to get out. And the Prime Minister of Nepal resigns as protests escalate following a ban on social media. Thanks so much for joining us. Tensions in the Middle East are on the rise after Israel launched a strike on Hamas leadership in Qatar. The attack came as they discussed a U.S. proposal for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. We get details from John Gambrell with the Associated Press.
Qatar's come out strongly condemning this strike that apparently happened when Hamas leaders were talking about a ceasefire deal now on the table over the Israel-Hamas war in the Gaza Strip. Israel has been threatening to launch a new offensive on Gaza City. We still don't know just how many people were hurt or killed in this attack, but it marks the second time that Qatar, an energy-rich nation on the Arabian Peninsula, has been targeted during the Mideast wars that came from Hamas's initial October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel. Back in June, Iran launched an attack on a Qatari airbase home to U.S. airmen over the Americans bombing Iranian nuclear sites. But this time, this is different. The Qataris have come out strongly against Israel. We've also seen regional countries like the United Arab Emirates also say that they back Qatar in this. So this likely will further strain the relationships that Israel has with the Gulf Arab countries, which it's been so desperate to try to make diplomatic recognition deals with, and likely is going to cause more tension in the wider Middle East as this offensive looms.
And as expected, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the Israeli strike.
I condemn this flagrant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar. All parties must work towards achieving a permanent ceasefire, not destroying it. Today's breaking news underscores the importance of the report that we launched today. It lays bare a stark reality. The world is spending far more on waging war than on building peace.
Meantime, the Israeli military is urging a full evacuation of Gaza City ahead of expanded military operations. The IDF dropped leaflets this morning warning Palestinians to get out.
نروح هاي اليوم نرمى علينا مناشير وهنا ناسخين ومش عارف يمكن الله يفرجها ان شاء الله هيك يضربونا ونتريح.
The warning came hours after the military intensified airstrikes on the urban area. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned this is only the beginning of the intensified ground maneuver there. In the South Asian nation of Nepal, the country's prime minister resigned Tuesday as protests escalated following a ban on popular social media platforms. So far, 19 protesters have died in the anti-corruption demonstrations. Protesters set fire to Nepal's parliament building today, smashing windows inside the building. Protesters can also be seen dancing and chanting around fires in the streets. Apparently, they have also blocked off the airport to prevent ministers from escaping the country. Nepal's army chief has invited protesters to engage in dialogue to find a solution to the country's current political crisis. He says there has been huge loss of life and property during the protests so far and urged demonstrators to show restraint. Here at home, housing starts were flat in the first half of the year compared with 2024. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says the country's two most expensive real estate markets weighed on the overall number of housing starts, with Vancouver and Toronto seeing declines. But it says cities like Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Ottawa, and Halifax built homes at paces that were either at or near records or in line with historical averages in the first half of the year. Average asking rents in Canada continued to go down in August. A new report from rentals.ca and Urbanation says the average rental rate across the country was $2,137 in August, down 2.3% from a year ago. Vancouver and Calgary saw some of the biggest declines, down 9.3% and 9.5% respectively from August of 2024. While the latest figures mark 11 straight months of declines, the results are still up 1% from 2023. When we return, we'll have more of the top stories from the West with Forum Daily West. And to deal with the housing crisis, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wants Prime Minister Mark Carney to adopt his party's plan. Poilievre says the Liberals should eliminate the federal sales tax on all homes worth $1.3 million or less. He wants to incentivize municipalities to speed up permits and cut development charges.
30% of the cost of a new home in Ontario today is direct taxes. 50%, as much as 50%. Is related to land use regulations. In Vancouver today, fully 60% of the cost of a new home is government. Taxes, charges, delays, fees, lawyers, accountants. More money for a new home goes to bureaucrats in government buildings than goes to the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers who actually build the home. Now, governments keep talking about how they have these wonderful plans for home building. You know what they need to do? Only one thing. Get out of the way.
Poilievre also says the government needs to get immigration under control, as he argues the large influx of newcomers over the past decade has caused housing shortages. And speaking of the feds, despite the Liberals not holding many seats across the prairies, they have decided to hold their upcoming retreat in Edmonton before Parliament resumes. According to political commentator Brian Lilly, this is a purposeful move.
Because they don't have a lot of seats in the prairies. I mean, that's exactly why. So if you count just the prairie provinces, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, there's 65 seats. And of those, the Liberals hold just 9. 9, that's it. They hold 20 seats in British Columbia out of, I believe, 43. So not quite half, but they have a good representation in British Columbia. But across the prairie provinces, it's 9 of 65. They've got 6 in Manitoba. They've got 2 in Alberta. They've got 1 in Saskatchewan. They're not doing well. And so I think this is an attempt to say, look, we hear you. We want to work with you. We are concerned about your issues. So there's a bit of politics in there, but also a bit of let's actually deal with one of the economic engines of the country that has not been getting a lot of love.
You can catch my full interview with Brian Lilly, where he also discusses the PM's announcement about how he's going to boost the economy. That's all coming up after Business News. The Alberta government has released its updated policy on books that will be available in school libraries. The new ban will only apply to books with images and illustrations of explicit sexual acts, not written descriptions. During a technical briefing with reporters, Education Minister Dimitrios Nicolaides said visual depictions have been the government's main concern, and the revised order will ensure literary classics stay in schools. We get more from Jack Farrell with the Canadian Press.
The government's original policy had told school boards to remove all books from its libraries that had written passages or images or illustrations or audio. And because of that, one public school board in Edmonton had put together a list of over 200 books that included some major titles like Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. But because of today's revision, that book and others that had made Edmonton Public's list, like Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, will be left alone on school library shelves. And the government says, it was never their intention to remove literary classics from shelves. Its main concern is just on images and illustrations of explicit sexual content. It'll be interesting to see how the school boards, 1, react to the new rules, and 2, how they actually eventually comply with them. So another interesting part is that under the new rules, every school board will have to submit a list to the province by October 31st. The province doesn't have to approve the list, but they will still have to be given the list. It would make sense to me that so will the public. The public will see these lists too, and it will be a compare and contrast situation with that. I'm sure some authors who found themselves on the first list from Edmonton Public will also probably respond in kind and maybe talk about their books not being pulled from shelves, because we saw a lot of reaction. Richard Van Camp, a well-known Canadian author, he too was quite upset that his book, The Lesser Blessed, was put on Edmonton Public's list, and he encouraged people to protest the order and to be angry about a government banning books like his. The minister told reporters today that the government is more concerned with images of sexual content and getting that out of schools because his not a direct quote, but the minister had said images are easy to comprehend for anybody in any grade level. Whereas the written word, the minister said, is dependent, like the understanding of written passages is dependent on children's vocabulary, reading level, etc. So the minister said their focus on images is because the minister thinks it's easier for everybody to understand what an image is versus to read it and understand it.
We'll be right back with more news from Forum Daily West. A pair of cattle ranchers from southern Alberta are in Levi, Quebec to represent our province at the national level for the Environmental Stewardship Award, an honor presented by the Canadian Cattle Association to recognize beef producers who explore innovative ways to protect, preserve, and enhance their operations and the environment simultaneously. BCN's Naveen Day visited Plateau Cattle Co. to learn more about how ranchers and cows work together in an utterly environmentally sustainable way.
Laura Lang and John Smith of Plateau Cattle Co. have been recognized by the Alberta beef producers as the Environmental Stewardship Award recipient for Alberta for 2025. The operation, close to Nanton, runs 450 highly efficient and functional purebred Black Angus and Angus-influenced cows. Lang believes environmental stewardship means much more than it did just a few generations ago.
I think for us today, we're realizing even more so. We can look outside and see all of the smoke that's come in, and that's something that's different. The climate has changed, and some of the things we face are changing.
Smith says when he and Lang found out about the nomination, it was a surprising and humbling experience for the two.
Our vet partners, VHS, Veterinary Agri-Health Services, nominated us, and that was a real surprise. We had no idea that was on anybody's radar, and so to be counted, among a lot of great producers in Alberta, we were just humbled and shocked.
Cattle ranching can sometimes receive a bad reputation when it comes to environmental stewardship. Some activists say methane from cattle contributes to climate change, but according to Plateau Cattle Co., the beef sector needs to thrive not just for the economy, but for the environment.
Cattle is what's going to keep the grass. So we need to have a thriving beef sector to protect our disappearing grasslands. If you don't have a keystone species such as beef or cattle to graze those grasses, they're going to disappear, they're going to get turned over. There's so many good things that happen there. It aids in biodiversity of your grass species and forbs all the other species that are in there as well. So creates habitat for birds, animals.
The cattle actually help us manage the environment. They're a real tool. They help with wildfire suppression,
Yes.
Keeping some of the fire ignition out of the forestry. And they help restore the grasslands. So we talk a lot about carbon sequestration. And I think consumers are starting to, or have, as far as we've seen, really understand the importance that they play.
Laura and John are in Levi, Quebec to compete in the Nationals until September the 11th. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Thanks so much, Nav. Lethbridge police have laid charges and seized 20 animals over the past week as part of 3 unrelated animal cruelty investigations. On September 2nd, police and community animal services responded to a report of a dog in distress at a home along the 500 block of 18th Street South. The emaciated dog did not have access to food or water and had sores and an open wound on its body. The dog was seized and transported to a local veterinarian for treatment. The owners, 39-year-old John Joseph Rosenberg and 45-year-old Atia Leslie Fleming, both of Lethbridge, are charged with causing unnecessary suffering to an animal. Both were released with conditions not to possess or care for any domestic animal and are scheduled to appear in court on October the 28th. The second investigation saw multiple animals seized after a house in the 600 block of 9th Street South was deemed unfit for habitation. The 2 tenants there, a 23-year-old woman and and 22-year-old man were ordered to vacate the property. That investigation is ongoing. And the third incident saw 5 cats seized from an unattended vehicle in the alley alongside Leaside Avenue. The 55-year-old owner of the vehicle was identified and issued 5 bylaw tickets for failing to provide basic animal care. His name is not being released. This month, Lethbridge gets to be treated with a stage adaptation of one of the most popular whodunits in the last few decades. New West Theatre is presenting Clue, a murder mystery thriller based on the iconic board game and 1985 cult classic film of the same name. The production cast say intense rehearsals quickly turned them into a closely connected ensemble.
The rehearsal process was fabulous. We all learned an absolute ton from Mark, who is a bit of an icon in Canadian theatre. But it was very intense, so we rehearsed 8 hours a day, 6 days a week for 4 or 5 weeks?
About 4 weeks.
About 4 weeks.
There's a lot of physical comedy in the show and really precise timing. So when you come see it, you'll know there's a lot of moving pieces, which we were able to have in rehearsal, which was a great gift to us. Like all the incredible team here.